There are places in America where the off-grid dream is quietly dying, not because someone banned it, but because the rules, the codes, the fees, and the inspectors have learned how to kill a dream without ever raising their voice. In 2025, it feels like there's a silent homesteading crackdown spreading across the map. Not a headline, not a law, just a slow tightening. One permit, one inspection, one tax bill at a time, until the idea of living free starts to feel like contraband. Because somewhere between the solar panels, the tiny homes, and the composting toilets built from YouTube confidence and stubbornness, something changed. Counties got stricter, taxes climbed, building codes multiplied like rabbits with clipboards, and suddenly, thousands of people who moved off-grid for freedom are realizing they've accidentally enrolled in a full-time, unpaid graduate program called Advanced Compliance. Welcome to 2025, the year where homesteading didn't get outlawed, but it did get discouraged. Strongly, persistently, creatively. Picture this: a quiet valley in Colorado where the wind howls so hard it erases your footsteps, and then a white county truck appears on the horizon, carrying a man whose spiritual enemy is unpermitted structures. A tropical ridge on the big island of Hawaii, where people built tiny houses overlooking the ocean, only to discover they now own a structure so illegal they technically can't live in it, sell it, or sometimes even fix it. A patch of Oregon forest where rain falls 300 days a year, but touching it without proper authorization feels like borrowing money from the mob. A Nevada homestead where dust storms roll like migrating continents, and the only thing policed harder than gambling is rainwater. A Texas pasture where freedom is a sacred word, right up until you install a septic system 1 inch out of code. These places were supposed to be refuges, sanctuaries for people tired of HOAs, zoning boards, and neighbors who call the county if your grass is too opinionated. Instead, they've turned into battlegrounds where ordinary people are fighting not the wilderness, but the paperwork required to occupy the wilderness. So today, we're going on a journey. Across 5 states. Across dreams built on cheap land, big skies, and the fantasy of being left alone. Across the quiet places where homesteading once felt limitless, and where, in 2025, more and more people are packing up, giving up, or being forced out. This isn't a story about laws. It's a story about pressure, about what happens when freedom meets regulation, and regulation doesn't blink. Welcome to the 2025 Homesteading Crackdown. Let's begin. Before we hit the first state, we need to talk about the phrase everyone keeps throwing around in 2025. Homesteading Crackdown. Sounds dramatic, right? Like a senator signed a bill at midnight called the Anti-Chicken Coop Freedom Act. But that's not how it works. In America, freedom rarely dies with a big speech. It dies with paperwork. A crackdown doesn't arrive in a helicopter. It arrives in an envelope. It looks like a friendly letter from the county saying, "Hey there, quick question. Is your home permitted for human existence? If not, please correct immediately, or sooner." It looks like a man named Stan stepping out of a white truck with a laser-accurate ability to sense unapproved composting toilets from 600 feet away. It looks like a zoning map designed by someone who spilled Skittles on a county atlas and decided that was good enough. Because here's the truth. Off-grid living in America is not illegal. It's just inconvenient. In the same way, being a salmon swimming upstream is inconvenient. You technically can do it, but everything around you seems designed to make sure you don't. A crackdown in 2025 is 1,000 tiny frictions, a septic code written by a committee of people who have never dug a hole in their life. a minimum house size requirement that suggests the county officials believe humans need at least 1,200 square feet to store all their anxieties. A rule that says you can't live in an RV on your own land, but you can absolutely park it there and look at it longingly, thinking about the life you could have had. A water rights system that treats rain as state-owned property falling temporarily through your airspace. A permit for solar panels because apparently the sun also needs paperwork. None of these things ban homesteading. They just rearrange the experience. Instead of building a cabin, you're building a relationship with the county clerk. Instead of learning how to weld, you're learning how to fill out a notice of intended self-sufficiency. Instead of chopping firewood, you're chopping through disclaimers in an 84-page zoning document written in a dialect known only as bureaucratic Latin. The real crackdown is simple. It's when living simply becomes complicated, when the dream of being left alone requires permission from people who definitely won't leave you alone. And nowhere is that more obvious than in the states we're about to visit. Let's start with the one place where the dream dies first, Colorado. If you want to understand why so many homesteaders are giving up in 2025, you start in Colorado, not the ski towns or the Instagram mountains. I'm talking about the San Luis Valley, the place where the wind arrives sideways and leaves your sanity in questionable condition. This is where thousands of people came chasing the classic off-grid dream: cheap land, big skies, a cabin you build yourself with stubbornness, optimism, and a hammer from Walmart. And for a moment, it works. Until the first winter arrives, and the second, and the third. And suddenly, you're realizing the YouTubers who told you Colorado is a perfect off-grid paradise conveniently left out the part where water freezes inside your house, while the stove is still running. But the cold isn't what breaks most people. It's the combination of cold, isolation, unpredictable neighbors, and a county code enforcement officer who appears like a cryptid every time you build something that looks vaguely like shelter. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. According to locals, 90 to 95% of newcomers eventually give up. Not because they're weak, but because the valley demands a level of resilience normally seen in documentaries about early polar explorers. Picture this. You've spent days insulating your tiny cabin with recycled foam, hope, and prayers. The temperature drops to -20. The wind starts practicing for a career as a freight train. You step outside to check on your solar panels, and there it is. A white county truck, idling quietly, watching you the way a mall cop watches teenagers. A man steps out, the kind of man who wears sunglasses even during blizzards. He nods at your cabin. Is that permitted? You look at the horizon, at the empty miles, at the silence so thick it has weight, at the fact that your nearest neighbor is a tumbleweed with commitment issues. Sir, you say, there are 5 people in this entire valley. Rules are rules, he replies, delivering a line from a Western where he's the villain, and the weather. And that's how it begins, the clash between the idea of freedom and the reality of rural regulation. Because Colorado isn't hostile, it's just indifferent. A place where nature tests you, bureaucracy tests you, and most people eventually decide they've had enough midterms. The snow, the cold, the isolation, those you can prepare for. But the paperwork, the inspections, the letters demanding you install a septic system that costs more than your land? That's the silent crackdown. Not a ban, not a law, just the steady realization that surviving the wilderness is easier than surviving the rule book meant to protect you from the wilderness. And so people leave. Not dramatically, no speeches, no protest signs. They just pack up quietly and drive north, south, or anywhere the wind doesn't bite and the county inspector doesn't know their first name. Colorado is where the homesteading dream freezes, and where, for 95% of people, it cracks. If Colorado freezes the dream, Hawaii melts it, slowly, beautifully, and with devastating paperwork. On the surface, Hawaii looks like the perfect off-grid fantasy. Warm winds, endless green, rainwater falling from the sky like a daily blessing, land that looks handcrafted for tiny homes, solar panels, and barefoot mornings. Then, you try to live there. Not vacation, not dream. Live. And the island greets you with something far more powerful than a volcano: the permitting department. People move to the Big Island imagining a cabin overlooking the Pacific. Instead, they star in a psychological thriller called "You Own a Home You're Not Allowed to Live In." This isn't exaggeration. This is the local reality. There was one day, when the county received over 150 complaints about unpermitted homes. That's as many as they normally get in an entire year. Imagine being one of those people. Sitting in your off-grid dream house, windows open, breeze perfect, ocean humming, when a letter arrives. "Hi, beautiful home. Quick question. Is this structure legally habitable? If not, please vacate until further notice." That's Hawaii, a place where building a house is easy, but existing inside it is a legal challenge. You can legally own your structure, legally stand inside it, legally admire it from across the lawn, but living in it, cooking in it, sleeping in it, that requires navigating a permitting maze designed by someone who hates joy. Tiny homes, cute, but unpermitted is unpermitted. Solar cabins, adorable, but is your wiring certified by an electrician who lives 2 islands away and answers the phone only on even-numbered days? Rainwater catchment, totally fine, unless it becomes too sophisticated, in which case it's regulated like a utility. Hawaii turns paradise into paperwork, dreams into hearings, hope into forms, silence into inspections. People don't break loudly. They just give up, sell, leave, or leave their illegal homes empty, abandoned shells of someone's perfect plan. Colorado breaks people with cold. Hawaii breaks them with forms. And next, we arrive in the place where the crackdown flows like water. Because in Oregon, it literally is about water. If Hawaii breaks you with paperwork, Oregon breaks you with rain. Endless, biblical, cinematic rain. Rain that falls straight through your motivation and lands on your hope. People imagine Oregon as a lush, green paradise, forests, rivers, moss-covered everything. A perfect place to collect water, build a cabin, and live quietly among the trees. Then you learn the secret. All that water? Yeah. None of it is really yours. Oregon has one of the strictest water rights systems in the country. Technically, the rain on your property was just passing through. Legally, it belongs to the state. Try explaining that to a cloud. And before we go further, let's fix the biggest myth online. No, Oregon did not arrest a man for having a rain barrel. What he had was not a barrel. It was 3 dams, up to 20 feet tall, blocking a natural waterway, holding enough water to fill 20 Olympic swimming pools. This wasn't, "I want to water my garden." This was, "I'm starting a private lake," on a creek the state owns. So yes, Oregon cracked down, but not on a cute cabin, on a DIY hydro empire. But even normal homesteaders feel the rules. Want a big rainwater system? Check regulations. Want to divert a creek to water your tomatoes? Nope, that's water with a resume. Want to dig a pond? Adorable. Here are 14 forms. Want to live off-grid in the forest? Sure, as long as your cabin meets code. Your septic meets code, your electrical meets code, and your existence aligns with a manual thicker than the average Oregon tree. If Colorado chases you with cold, and Hawaii chases you with permits, Oregon chases you with compliance. Compliance for water, compliance for structures, compliance for anything that casts a shadow. People don't flee Oregon because they hate the land. They flee because they get tired of negotiating with the rain, tired of asking permission to do things that feel like living. The wilderness is free, but living beside it requires a license. Oregon doesn't push people out by force. It regulates them out. Gently, persistently, drop by drop. And if you think Oregon is strict, wait until you see Nevada, a state where even the sky is under supervision. If Oregon treats water like a sacred artifact, Nevada treats it like a federal employee. In Nevada, the sky is not just weather. The sky is a regulated resource. This is the state where you can gamble away your savings at 3 a.m., eat an $8 lobster dinner, and legally own a flamethrower. But collecting too much rainwater might require a permit. Nevada doesn't hate homesteaders. Nevada doesn't love homesteaders. Nevada simply loves water rights more than anything else. And the reason is simple. There is no water. Not enough of it anyway. So every drop from the sky is escorted to the ground by the Water Resources Division like a celebrity with armed security. To be fair, small rainwater systems? Usually fine. A couple of barrels, a tank or two, okay. But the moment your setup starts looking too professional, starts resembling infrastructure, Nevada politely coughs. Hi, just wondering, are you sure that water is yours? And then the paperwork begins. Nevada's relationship with water is like Las Vegas's relationship with money. You may think it belongs to you, but in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't. But water is only half the story. Nevada enforces building codes with an intensity ancient civilizations reserved for treason. Want to live full-time in an RV on your own land? Adorable. The county would love to remind you that an RV is for recreation, not permanent residence. Want to drop a tiny home on your acre in the desert? Sure, if it's connected to approved utilities, meets setbacks, aligns with zoning, and doesn't offend the ecosystem of sagebrush and rattlesnakes. Want to build a cabin off-grid? Totally possible. If your septic, foundation, electrical plan, and smoke detectors follow a code book so detailed, it might as well include a chapter called Emotional Expectations of the Building Inspector. That's the Nevada paradox. You move there for freedom. You stay for the sunsets. You leave after the second letter from the county. Your structure appears to exist. Please explain. Nevada's crackdown isn't loud. It's dusty, sun-bleached, and delivered in an envelope. And now we head to Texas, a state that worships freedom more loudly than any other, until you ask it about septic systems. Texas loves freedom. Texas breathes freedom. Texas prints freedom on bumper stickers, t-shirts, gas stations, and probably baby announcements. This is the state where you can own 20 acres, 3 horses, a flamethrower, and a truck big enough to tow the moon, and nobody bats an eye. But try installing a septic system 1 inch out of compliance. Now you've got the government's attention. In Texas, off-grid living is absolutely legal, as long as it's perfectly, flawlessly, obsessively on code. Newcomers never see it coming. They imagine sunsets, open land, big horizons, and a cabin built with reclaimed lumber and enthusiasm. But 2025 Texas greets homesteaders with a different kind of sunset. A bright orange notice taped to your door. This property is not approved for permanent human occupancy. Welcome to the land of contradictions. Texas will let you drive a lifted truck that violates 4 laws of physics. But live full-time in an RV on your own land? Absolutely not. Temporary use only. Please vacate, citizen. Texas will let you own enough firearms to start an independent nation. But build a tiny home without a stamped engineering plan? Sir, are you trying to start a rebellion? And the septic rules? To the untrained eye, a septic system is a box you bury underground. To the county, it's a sacred artifact installed with NASA-level precision. So newcomers do the math. Septic permit, hundreds septic design, hundreds more septic installation, thousands random inspections, a couple more hundreds non-compliant fines, even more thousands. Texas isn't banning homesteading. It's just making sure your composting toilet doesn't end civilization. But the effect is the same. People arrive with dreams of independence and leave after spending more on wastewater engineering than on their actual house. Texas sells wild freedom, but the fine print says, freedom must be approved by the Department of Environmental Quality. And that's the theme of 2025. Not bans, not crackdowns, just rules tightening slowly until people can't breathe. Which brings us to the bigger picture. When you look at these 5 states, Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Nevada, Texas, a pattern emerges. Not a conspiracy, not a coordinated attack, something quieter, slower, spreading like desert dust, mountain cold, or coastal paperwork. Pressure. Pressure from codes written decades ago, before tiny homes, solar cabins, and YouTube engineering tutorials. Pressure from taxes rising faster than incomes. Pressure from counties drowning in complaints, shortages, and housing crises. Pressure from staff who interpret every rule with the enthusiasm of someone auditioning for most serious bureaucrat of the year. Pressure from climate, harsh winters, extreme heat, wind slicing through insulation like wet paper. Pressure from water rights older than every modern homesteader combined. Pressure from septic rules, zoning maps, permits, inspections, and environmental standards that make sense in cities. But not when your nearest neighbor is a mile away and his name is the wind. This is the 2025 homesteading reality. Not you can't, but you can. If you have money, time, patience, engineering documents, certified systems, and emotional stability rarely found in the general population. People aren't fleeing because they hate the lifestyle. They're fleeing because the lifestyle now requires a builder, an engineer, a code consultant, a septic specialist, a lawyer, a therapist, and occasionally, an exorcist for the permitting department. The dream of living simply hasn't died. It's just become complicated. Homesteading used to be the cheapest way to live. Now it's becoming a luxury, an extreme sport for people who can fight the weather, the land, the county, the state, and their own expectations at the same time. Freedom is still out there, real, raw, difficult, but it's hiding in smaller pockets, places so far, so empty, so unforgiving that bureaucracy can't be bothered to chase you there. Not yet. And that brings us to the end of the story. If these 5 states teach us anything, it's this. Freedom isn't disappearing. It's just migrating, drifting further from cities, further from paved roads, further from inspectors with clipboards and existential dread. It's out there, past the last mailbox, past the last utility pole, past the last place where anyone bothers to measure your setbacks. The homesteading dream isn't dead. It's just become honest. It demands more now. More resilience, more skill, more grit, more willingness to read a zoning document without losing your will to live. Maybe that's why people are leaving. Not because the land failed them, but because the system around the land became heavier than the land itself. But there will always be people who try again, who pack the truck one more time, who chase silence, space, and the idea of being left alone, who build anyway, grow anyway, live anyway, because freedom, real freedom, has never been comfortable, never been easy, never been cheap. It's a long road, but the view, unmatched. So if this journey made you think, if you want to explore more forgotten corners, off-grid oddities, and the last pockets of American freedom, hit the like button, subscribe, and help appease the algorithm, which, much like a county inspector, demands regular offerings. Until next time, stay curious, stay stubborn, and stay free.